it's a very emotional experience being a part of the race. The way you travel over the island and they introduce you to it, and you all hold hands in a circle on the beach before you start, and then you walk off the beach and you can only just see it's I think it's 32 miles. It's 52 kilometers between the islands, and you can just see the silhouette of the top of the volcano just coming out of the clouds on the horizon. And you go, oh my God, I've got to paddle there. Like using just my arms, you've just flown over across, and it's taken like half an hour, 45 minutes in a plane. How am I supposed to paddle there? And yeah, I was lucky enough to actually win the first time, and that gave me confidence that okay, this year I know I can do it, and I can train a lot harder and train with the attitude of like I really want to defend my title.
Hello and welcome to Speaking from Water, episode 51. I have on the line one of Australia's great endurance athletes. He is been killing it this year and killing it for many years. And we are very excited to have on the show Charlie Verco. Charlie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, dude, it's been a long time coming. You got on my radar a couple months ago. As you know, I'm training Rob Brown to do Moloka'i to Oahu, and in preparation for that with him, I was just looking down the previous just athletes who've been crushing the paddleboard arena, and you immediately came top to the list. And I started looking into you and looking into all your accolades with Lifesaving and the Ironman, all the events. And it's really a pleasure to get to talk to you today about all these matters concerning athletics, nutrition, how you go about this and your mindset. So let's get right to it. What First of all, how are you doing today, and what's going on in Sydney?
I'm doing well. Yeah, thank you for that. That setup was very flattering. Um, Today I've just had a bit of a crazier day. I'm still building into my Molokai program coming out of Aussie. So I had a lighter day with just a run this morning, like a social run, and then some gym Savo, and then catching up on some uni. I'm heading into exams at the moment.
Sick. Well, I spent a lot of time watching the Aussies, and I spent some time watching you at Aussies. How was Aussies for you?
Oh, this will definitely go down as one of my most memorable Aussies. I was very stoked with how I went. There's obviously ups and downs as with surf. It's unpredictable, and that's why we love doing it. But I was stoked to come away with a third in the iron. That was very unexpected. And in all my other races, I gave myself every chance to do the best I could. There was not many notes afterwards, which is always a good way to feel after racing.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, listening, Aussies is the crown jewel of the season for Australian life-saving competition, and it is just the where everyone comes. It's like the Super Bowl for you guys, and I'm a big fan here in America, and I was watching it live streaming, and congratulations on coming in third in the Ironman, and the Ironman really is the crown jewel event of Aussies. So that you must be really stoked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Aussies is the end of the season for us over here. So we spend like 10 or 11 months, some of us training to try and peak at this time of year. And in my opinion, like along with the Taplin, which is like a relay version almost of the Iron is the most sought after event to place well in. So I was very, very happy with how it went.
And how did that race feel for you? Can you break it down for us, like leading into it? Because isn't it towards the end of the whole ball of events? So you're kind of gassed anyway, and it's a gassing event. Um, and for those also who don't know what the Ironman is, can you explain what it is?
Yeah, for sure. I'll cover the structure of the Aussies as well. So the Ironman involves a board race, and a ski race and swimming and running all combined. So they're all just back to back. The three legs, you just start off the beach. The order is randomized. You get told at the start of the carnival, and it stays consistent throughout. And it usually goes anywhere between about 12 to 20 minutes, depending on conditions. Obviously, you have to set cans out further if the break zones are really long. And it's the most endurance style event in the short course season because it has the backup of three legs. You have to be master of all to go well in this race. And the Aussies is structured over 5 days for the Open Carnival, and there's many different events. You have all the individual legs of the iron that I just mentioned, as well as many team events, and you've got thousands of athletes coming from all over Australia to compete. So you have to go through heaps of heats to qualify for the finals day on the Sunday. And then the iron is the second last event on that finals day. So you're usually pretty exhausted by then.
How do you, I guess, save or build the energy to culminate in that moment when you're doing so much to lead up to that moment? I mean, aside from the training to get you there, just the act of competition during that carnival period, and then to culminate it. It's kind of a reserve question, but like, how do you hold it, or is it a gauge of your internal self?
Yeah, it's hard to answer that without referencing training. Like you take a lot of your confidence based on the preparation you've done. Yeah, like confidence in your fitness and your speed and in your ability to take on that load. But at the same time, it's very mental. Like people have very different ways of preparing for races. And for me, to get myself in the headspace to race, it usually revolves around having a good taper and keeping my nutrition right and sleeping well. But at the same time, it's not getting too overwhelmed and too focused on the racing that's coming up, because if you're burning energy thinking about everything that could go right or could go wrong in your racing, that's not really benefiting you until you're actually in the race. So with 5 days of racing, you really have to take it a race at a time. And the other tricky part about with surf is you can't really save yourself because you're always under threat. It doesn't matter where you are in the race, you can always come through on a wave from behind or have people come through from behind you on a wave. So I guess to kind of manage that, you have to really stay focused on your race plan in front of you, not think about, oh, I've got to not go too hard in this race because I've got another two races tomorrow I've got to qualify through. I always just try and visualize my race and have a plan and try and stick to that. And then later take confidence in the fact that I'm fit enough to keep backing up all the way through the week.
And you speak about this concept of a wave coming uh, to get you into the lead, or vice versa, someone else getting you from behind. And really, that's like one of the most beautiful things about surf lifesaving and the Ironman in particular is surf conditions, as opposed to say a pool swimming event where all physical aspects of water are neutral. Here, the ocean determines the winner to a great extent, aside from just the physical nature of the athlete. In this particular race, the waves were of consequence. You guys had lots of action in the surf. Take us to the starting line and what your mentality was, and how you do prepare for a race like that. Like, what are you thinking about? Like, do you have a calming mechanism? And then maybe run us through the race, that particular race, and how it went for you, particularly through those events.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So on the finals day, I had three races. I'd qualified for all of the races I wanted to on that day, which was the board race, which was first for me in the morning, then the iron, and then the taplin, which is that six-person relay with two ski paddlers, two board paddlers, and two swimmers. And the part that we love about the sport is that we're a victim to the weather, and it can also provide gifts. So in the morning, it was pretty mild. Like it was raining a lot, but the water was pretty calm. It was glassy. There wasn't much swell, and I had the board first up, which is the event that um I want to go the best in. It's my strong point. Uh, so in order to get myself focused for that, when it's a little bit more mild, you feel less exposed to the waves and to that randomness. So I was very focused in the tent waiting before the race on keeping myself motivated, keeping myself focused, running through my race plan. But I also had a list in front of me of all the reasons that I wanted to go well, and just basically things that would motivate me to just psych me up to get that adrenaline that you need to perform at your best on a race day. And I did that board race, and I basically nailed my race plan. I gave myself every chance. And on the way in through the break, it just wasn't in the right spot, and didn't quite get the result I wanted. I came away with a sixth, which is still my best ever result at Aussies. So I can't be too unhappy. But I was still disappointed after that, because I really wanted to win that race, and I thought I gave myself the best chance. But it kind of switched up my attitude towards the iron. I'd looked at the forecast for the conditions that day, and I knew that there was a big front coming through, so it's going to get windy. And I was praying before the board race that it was going to happen, and because it was going to come on shore, and I knew if I could get to that last can first, which I did, and come around, I could work the runners and have a good advantage. Now it didn't work out like that, but that wind came in really strong right before the Ironman, and it made the water really turbulent. The swell period was really short, and it was all over the place. The Maroochydore beach we did is very exposed. Um, so it became a different day. If you watch I'm sure you're watching the live stream. It looked like a completely different day, even though it was only an hour apart. And because I didn't have any pressure on myself in the iron, I was stoked to make that final. The field at the moment is so competitive. There's like 40 or 50 guys that were angry that they weren't in that final. So just being there was pretty special. And my attitude was more to enjoy just being there and be aware that because we iron surf, anything can happen. So just take what happens. And it was funny. We were held on the start line for like 4 or 5 minutes, which when you're pumped up for a race, like this is a whole year of training in the making. This is the main event, and you just want to go. You're holding your ski, trying to keep it straight in the waves. And when you sat there for 6 minutes, it kind of takes a toll on you. There was even a big sidewash that came through, and so it hit all the skis like dominoes. And we're professional athletes meant to be controlling our skis, and we're getting washed around like little kids. And it just, yeah, that almost relaxed me more, just because it felt fun and silly. And when the gun went off, I was next to my teammate, Jackson Borg, and then the other person from my surf club, Charlie Brooks, was on the very other end of the line. And Jackson and I had a really good start, and Charlie also had a really good start. And we got to the first can, first, second, third, just from different parts of the line. So just as good a start as you could hope for in that race. And I followed that race around. Like you train really hard, you're used to pushing yourself, but you can never match how it how you race as much as you can when you're actually racing. So for my transitions, I was in a good position, but I didn't want to gas myself in the run legs of the transitions. But even though I felt like I was taking it pretty easy, I was absolutely wrecked. Just because you have so much adrenaline, you just put yourself in so much oxygen debt. And because the wave period was so short, no one ever really got that far ahead. So Jackson came in on the first wave, and I was kind of paddling on the little bump that sits behind that wave, and ran around, picked up my board, kind of went separate direction to Jackson on the way into the water, just because I had a plan of where I thought that best way to get out through the surf was. And I had a pretty good run. Jackson, unfortunately, got hit by a few more waves than me. And Joe Collins, who's one of the best Ironmen in the world, also had a really good run out on the board. So we were fighting around the cans together, and I managed to get a little wave ahead. But again, it just because that wave period was so short, the waves would catch each other. So I got off, and realistically, I only had like 4 or 5 meters on everyone, and it was going into the swim leg last, which is my weakest leg. And again, in iron racing, I'm never going in my head, oh my God, I'm winning. You just go, anything can happen still. You just need to focus on what's in front of you. And I kind of took confidence in my skills. I knew that I had lots of really, really good swimmers around me, and I just had to do my best to hold onto their feet and sit on their wash, let them drag me around the course. And they got away from me. Like Dan Collins, who won the race, is an incredible swimmer, just had a look in his eye of determination and just dropped the whole field, got his own wave, and was so stoked for him to win it. I reckon he was the people's favorite. There was no one that more people would have been happier for. And I probably dropped back to around fifth or sixth, but I was just confident in my body surfing ability, and I got a good wave. And body surfed at the beach, got up and ran through in the third, and couldn't believe it. I was stoked.
How did that feel?
It it never feels the way you think it's going to feel. You can't experience all the time and effort and just like pain you've put into training and to working towards a goal. You can't experience that all at once. But when you cross the line, all of your mates are there and they're coming up and congratulating you. And you just are so happy and you just sit there going, thank you, I'm so happy. And then it really, really settles in over time, going that no one can take that away from me. That if that's the best Iron result of my career, I'm happy, because there's a lot of amazing Ironmen that have yeah, never been able to achieve that, just because surf sports is challenging, and you don't always have to be the fastest on the day to win. There's a skill component and there's a randomness component, and that's again exactly why we all do it. We love it.
Awesome story, and again, congratulations. Like, so it kind of takes my mind. You've been at this now a long time. I mean, you're only um your low 20s, right? How old are you?
Turned 23 last week.
Yeah, dude. So like you're super young, but you've been in the game a good clip, and looking at your stats, like you've been winning for a long time. Um, take us, I guess, to your first Ironman, that competitive race Ironman, and how did that feel? And like I guess contrast that with how much has changed for you, with like knowledge, emotions, feeling.
Yeah, I can't exactly remember my first Ironman, which obviously means it wasn't that special. And it's funny that you say that I've been having good results for a long time, because I always think back as I was pretty awful at surf club when I started. Like in Australia, you start nippers usually under sixes, and it's basically run as a surf skills and awareness, like uh, learning community, and a lot of people that live around the coast do it, and it becomes very social as well. Like that's where a lot of my close friends from when I was younger that are still my mates now. That's how I met them, and I was a scrawny kid, and whilst I loved the ocean when it was warm and dead flat, I was usually scared and cold most of the time when I was at Nippers. I was terrified of waves, actually. Like I hated surf, and I was constantly worried about being having to go out and surf that I wasn't comfortable with. And that was very difficult, because I love the ocean so much, and it was this battle that I was fighting between really wanting to be out there, but then I was just too scared to go out. And as I yeah, that almost led to me kind of leaving Nippers, because at one point I actually hated it so much that I stopped for a year. And luckily my parents weren't pushy and they let me come around on my own, because all my mates were there, and I did love it when it was the conditions I liked. And eventually my mates dragged me along to one of the training sessions, Nippers training sessions, where you start learning skills on the board and you start training for Ironmans. And that was, I think, really where my passion grew, because I loved the community that there's of improvement, and I love the idea that you can work hard and get better at something. And again, I started doing that, and I was pretty awful, but I did a few sessions, and then all of a sudden I was improving, and that was, yeah, that just fueled me. I was motivated, and I learned that if I kept pushing myself, I could keep improving. And
S- So
there was
how, I'm
always
sorry to interrupt. How old were you when you first got into the Nippers?
So you start when you're like 5 years old when you're doing nippers, and that's where you just go down on a Sunday and they take you out for a swim. They try and get you on a board. It's really just it's I think it's kind of the equivalent to your junior lifeguard program, where you raise kids up through nippers and then they become volunteer lifeguards, and you are kind of teaching them the surf skills and yeah, learning about rips and surf safety. But then the, the age I would have started training, when I would have been about 9 or 10. And people start a lot younger than that. People start paddling competitively in under sevens or something. Like they they start being competitive very young here. And yeah, I started a bit later, but still loved it.
And the speak to that sense of community that you love so much, and how, w it the life just life-saving in general, it draws a special kind of person. Speak to that kind of person and the community that was so positive there as a young person, and what it is about that group that is so great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to live by the coast for most of my life, and that meant that I was able to do nippers, and I met most of my closest friends through nippers and through surfing, and we'd hang out and we'd go surf together, and yeah, that was just the most fun thing we could do. And as yeah, as we got older, you kind of the surf club allowed for almost a sense of freedom. I when I was younger and obviously my parents wouldn't let me go out surfing on my own. I remember there was a specific day when Dad got out of the water and said, "One more wave, Charlie." And I said, "Yep, yep, sure, I got one more wave." And obviously the next 10 waves that I caught weren't good enough to go in on. So Dad ended up leaving, and I remember walking home the whole way home going, "Oh, I'm going to be in so much trouble when I get home." I didn't listen to Dad, and when I got home, Dad wasn't even mad, and he just said, "Yeah, I didn't want to wait for you anymore." And that was when I was first allowed to start going surfing on my own. All of a sudden, I was this little kid who had to be looked after his parents that was allowed to go to the beach on his own and have this sense of freedom. And then that expanded through the surf club because it almost benefited my parents as well. During school holidays, they wouldn't have to entertain me. What would happen is we'd go to get up in the morning, go to swimming training at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Then on the way home, mom or dad would drop us off at the surf club with a $20 note for lunch or a packed lunch or whatever was suitable that day. And you'd meet your mates there and you'd all be so excited because the surf was good. And you'd go out for a surf for until you got hungry and you'd come in and you'd go buy lunch and then you'd go for another surf until you got cold and then you'd come and sit in the showers in the surf club until the caretaker either came and yelled at you or turned the hot water off. And then you finish that and you go train in the afternoon with the squad again. And you just spend all day with your mates. It was so much fun and that surf club became your second home.
Incredible. Your love for surfing is deep, and you seem almost like surfing is your first love. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. Surfing, I was definitely introduced to surfing before I was introduced to any sort of competition. Yeah, my first memory of really being in the water was with my dad teaching me to stand up on a foamy surfboard in the North Bondi babies pool when I was 5 years old, and yeah, I just loved it. I guess I've always there's been a drive for me to enjoy surfing since I was born. My my godfather, who's actually a surf photographer in Bondi, and his name's Eugene. He's he's also a very avid surfer, and he came to the hospital on the day where I was born and gave me a cake of surf wax and a surf magazine. And obviously, it's just been very encouraging to my surfing, and I love surfing. I don't get to do it anywhere near as much as I'd like to because I'm very passionate about my competition. But when I get the chance and it's not going to absolutely destroy me physically on top of my training program, I love to get out for a surf. Like that that when I was younger, we usually have about 8 weeks of off season, and it would come out of training all the way into Aussies to just you go surfing twice a day. You go before school, go after school, and just it's like a reward for all that training. You get to go and spend time in the water and just enjoy it. It doesn't have to hurt or anything.
And can you kind of break that down for us mentally? Because there does seem like surfing is a hard sport, but it's more of it's an internal thing. I believe it's something that you do for yourself and you're with nature, whereas the competition is a whole different ball of wax. And both of them are very physically taxing. But can you kind of, I guess, is there a time, or was there a time when you were conflicted between the two? Like, because you can only do so many things. You got to choose in life, right? So, what is it? Break that down for us. I guess the conflict and the benefit of those two sports for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a conflict, and I don't think that'll ever go away. And I think the reason that surf and competition has been winning a lot lately is because I can only try and compete at an elite level for a certain amount of time, and I'm hoping surfing will always be there for my whole life. And I've actually been reflecting on that though recently. This year I've been surfing a lot less than I normally would, just because I've been so focused and very rigorous in following my training schedule, and surfing would just put an extra load on that would impact my recovery a lot. So when I did finish, I went away on a surf trip with all of the a few of the boys from Surf Lifesaving, and it was so good to we'd go for a surf and then come home, have some lunch, do the same thing, go for 2 or 3 surfs in a day, and you come home exhausted, but it's a different feeling when you're training. You're absolutely knackered and shattered, but you're doing it to yourself to be tired. Whereas when you're surfing, you're just tired from spending all day doing something that's so much fun. It's so rewarding to, yeah, feel that kind of fatigue that you've you've earned a rest at the end of the day, but you didn't dislike it at all. You loved what you were doing. And being in the ocean when you're surfing is it again gives you that freedom. But when you don't always have to have a goal when you're surfing. You can just enjoy being there. Sometimes when I've spent ages away from the water is when I actually appreciate it the most, because you can just go out there and you can relax and appreciate it. I had another little trip away last weekend just to Palm Beach, and the I'd done a swim session and a like 2.5 hour Moloka'i paddle that day. So I was pretty shattered, but all my mates are going surfing. I didn't want to miss out. And we went as the sun was setting in this little corner, like wedging break. And we had it just to ourselves, the four of us, as the sun was setting. It was a beautiful night. We had a pod of dolphins that sat with us the whole time, which is so weird. Like normally they're leaving. They were, yeah, breaching out of the water near us. We were worried they were going to hit us. We had seal come through as well, and then a full moon came up as the sun set, and it just you can't really describe that feeling. I guess just you feel very satisfied and relaxed, but you're energized as well because you're in the cold water. You're doing something that's still physically active. You have that like adrenaline and endorphins, but you're also just hanging out with your mates. It's a good time.
Thank you for painting that picture. That was epic. W- when you're dreaming of your perfect surf scenario, or maybe a surf scenario gone by, can you give us that setup? Like, what do you look to? What kind of wave are you like? Oh man, that's what's up.
Well, that's the best bit out at the ocean. Like it's never the same. And I guess you get greedy because if you're surfing the same wave over and over again, you get bored of it. You love that change. So if I'm really energetic and like ready to get my body beat up a bit, I'd love to try and surf a slabbing barrel. But then if I just want to go out and relax and do nice turns, I'd love a softer, gentler wave with just long rides. And obviously you always want it a little bit empty, but you never want to be on your own because I know it's a bit more boring, and you you love when you go get a good wave, you want your mates to see it and you want to go talk about it when you're at the back again. Um, so I guess it changes. One of my favorite places in the world is Seal Rocks. It's about 4 hours north of Sydney here, and it does kind of give you that opportunity to just of that variety of different waves. There's so many different beaches in a short space, and it's not as populated as Sydney, so it's less busy, obviously. And you get that option to, depending on how you feel, go and find the waves that you want to surf.
And Australia is so beautiful in that regard. You guys have so your beach isn't just straight. You have nooks and crannies and headlands. Um, can you for people who are from the United States listening in, kind of describe the nuance of I guess your local beaches, but just Australia in general, and how the 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 coast is so beautiful.
It's hard to describe the nuance because I've only known Australian beaches. I'm assuming what you mean is in images I've seen of most American beaches, they're very long, stretching, and open and very straight. However, especially in Sydney, the coastline's mostly cliffs and headlands, especially around Bondi. So what that means is that the beaches are very set back within a cliff. So surf wraps around into it around those cliffs, or it can bounce off it and create all different varieties of waves. And it also makes it really interesting to just explore as well at the same time. The paddle I did last Friday, the 2.5 hour one, I'm currently living in Coleroy over the other side of the bridge on the northern beaches. And I had the benefit of just being able to walk out the front and get on my board and just start paddling. And I was having to decide how I was going to get there. I either cut straight across and spend a lot, be all the way out to sea, or follow the coastline to get a longer paddle in. And I decided to take the longer paddle, and it meant that I just got to see so much more wildlife, and you experience the change in the water as you go. Like the wind was going slightly with me, so when I was going out around a headland, I'd get runners that I could catch, and I could surf them a little bit, and then I'd go into the bay and it'd be all glassy smooth, and the water was crystal clear and blue, and yeah, you'd see birds and fish, and it's never boring. It's always changing. There's that that uniqueness of every beach is what allows you to find different surf and different conditions everywhere you go.
And you speak there to the aesthetics of water so well. Can you elaborate a little more on that as far as the water changing over a day at any given beach in the world? I mean, every 10 minutes, it's something different, and there's something just incredibly beautiful, perplexing, mind blowing. Um, I worked a lifeguard stand over the weekend for the first time in years, and I was able to just sit and be at the beach without any distractions aside from, like, the beach goers. My kids weren't there, no phones or anything, and it brought back just like the fact that here the ocean has changed in this 8 hour period from like glass to windy to stormy, and it's the most beautifully amazing thing. And someone like yourself who spends so much time in the water training, uh, or being leisurely, like, speak to the nature of changing water in an environment, um, that brings you to a different place and the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's so hard to put into words. I think it does revolve around that fact that because it's always changing, it's hard to ever be bored of it. You can never go to the beach and expect the same thing twice. And I think like water is always able to accentuate the beauty around it. So like if you're sitting low to the water at the right angle, it's reflective, right? So if you see a sunset, it bounces all the colors off the water, and it it basically doubles the view of the sunset. Whereas if you're sitting above it, you can look into it and see what's going on under the water. You can see the fish on a nice day. It can be like blue and almost green. And then if it's not nice, it can be on a gray day. It's very angry looking, and it can almost dictate how you feel. If it's a beautiful day, it can make you feel happy. If it's not as nice a day, it can be scarier. And I think one of the best parts about it is that it takes it's something else kind of helping you dictate how you feel. So yeah, again, it's hard to put into words. I can come to training on a day and be in an awful mood, and then all of a sudden the surf will be awesome, and it might not even be a beautiful day, but if there's good waves and it's going to challenge me, or it's I'm going to have to work really hard to navigate the surf. That's exciting. It can bring me out of my mood. If I get there and I can be having a good day and it's cold and miserable and it's dry and your skin is stinging and you just go, I hate this. Why do I do this? It humbles you. It keeps you on your toes. And I think, yeah, just that fact that you can never be sick of it, and never guess what it's going to be like, is what keeps bringing people back to it. And it can provide so much joy, and it can take races away from you. It can hurt you. It can fill your head with water and make you feel disgusting. But I know I love it.
And when it comes to training in the natural world versus training, say, in a swimming pool, how does that affect your mental space and kind of as an elite athlete? Um, when you are in the pool, does your mind go to a different way of existing, as far as like your intensity, your way of drawing power from the environment. Um,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't think you'll like my answer to this. To me, to me, the pool is very much something that I go there and I hurt myself, and I wouldn't say I like swimming because I do swimming to allow myself to do surf club because I want to me swimming is the hardest physical activity in the world. Like it uses every part of your body. It's insanely technical. It's hypoxic. You have to hold your breath. And you can come on a day in the morning and it's freezing cold. You can come on a day and it's too hot. It's just it's it's very testing. But at the same time, if I haven't swum for a long time, I miss it. I miss that feeling of waking up early and feeling like you've accomplished something. I miss that feeling of knowing what it's like to give everything you had and just be fully physically exhausted. But then at the same time, you're doing that alongside your mates. You're suffering together. Um, and yeah, one of the reasons I don't love swimming is because it's, as I said earlier, it's one of my weaknesses. So I've put a lot of time into trying to improve it. And when I have had other aspects of my sport where I can put less time into it and see much more improvement, it gets very frustrating. But at the same time, I think it's funny how I'm forcing myself to go into a different aquatic environment to allow myself to appreciate and the one that I love to be in a lot more, which is the surf, because it's less predictable. It's always changing, and yeah, the pool is much more predictable and it's much more honest. You can't you can't hide from your times in the pool.
Yeah, and sticking on the concept of swimming in the pool, because the pool for me is always also a place where I go to keep my skills for when I get to the ocean tight. It's kind of it's a pain center as you just described. It's always the same. You go there and you could just put in the hard work. And first, when did swimming enter your world as a competitive thing? And was it around the Nippers time as far as pool swimming? And then how did you look at pool swimming? And was there ever a point when you were like, hey, maybe this is a direction I want to go exclusively, or was it always something that you built um, to do your other disciplines?
Yeah, so it comes back to when I first started doing training on the board and I started seeing myself improving. And then you can only do you reach a stagnant point where you're not improving anymore and you're going, oh, why did I all of a sudden stop? And then you hear all of your mates at swimming training in the morning and you're like, oh, okay, I want to keep improving. I want to keep up with mates. I want to start beating them. So I started swimming training. And again, yeah, I've never felt like I wanted to be a pool swimmer. That could just be for the fact that I'm not good enough to be a pool swimmer. But again, I was doing the pool stuff to allow myself to do the stuff I knew I loved, which was the ocean training.
How old were you when you started getting into the pool training?
Or you do swimming lessons in Australia, so it's I guess just you're more focused on progressing out of those swimming lessons into a more of a squad. So I would say I started swimming squad when I was maybe 12 years old.
And you would do do you have a swim team there? Like in America, there's a summer league, and all the kids do who do swimming do like the summer league, and it's not as very intense, but there's still racing. Were you doing racing in the pool then, or just pool training?
No, the only swimming racing I've done would be at my school swimming carnivals or at the compulsory club champs carnivals for the pool that you were training with. And I've never really gone into that pool area just because I haven't wanted to and I've known where you're sitting usually when you're in training sessions and I didn't love competing in the pool like I loved competing in the ocean. So I never had that motivation to go, I want to see how fast I can go in the pool. I'd rather go surfing. It was the
Yeah,
answer to that.
gotcha. So I guess when is this the when did you like start stepping it up, I guess? Like you have two particular coaches that were world champions themselves. I have them in my note, their names in my notes. Maybe you could help me out. Um, who are your like famous coaches?
Jimmy and
Sorry.
Scotty were the coaches I had for the longest.
Yes.
Jimmy and Scotty Thompson.
Okay. Yes. Exactly. How did they I guess tick you up into a higher level, and what tell me about your experience when you started getting into like the highest of caliber of people around you, and how that kicked you into another gear.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, Jimmy and Scotty are both excellent coaches. I wouldn't have achieved anything I have in the sport without them. Jimmy was an Olympic finalist in the K4. So he was an incredible kayaker, and that translates very well to ski paddling. But funnily enough, he was actually my first board coach in nippers. He was the head coach when I first came down to training because he had children that were around my age. And he was an excellent, yeah, he was an excellent coach in my nipper when I was a nipper. As I outlined before, like, my biggest issue with the training was my fear of waves. I remember I'd be at school and be distracted from the schoolwork because I'd seen on the forecast that it was going to be 3 foot. Yeah, I'm not talking big waves. Like I was scared if it got 3 or 4 foot, and I'd be checking the surf cam, going, oh, like the training's gonna be terrifying tonight if it's too big, and it would take all my focus. But Jimmy was really good at being patient and not pushing me too hard. And he was understanding, and I think that was very helpful in my journey to obviously overcoming that fear because it took me a long time. Um, so yeah, when people in my teams were like yelling at me, going, Charlie, why, like, you got to race, you're in our team. Jimmy would be very understanding because he knew that if he pushed me too hard, it could drive me out of the sport. And so I'm very grateful that he was that patient with me. And yeah, he also helped fuel my passion for the sport. He's the one who taught me through hard training that I can improve, which is what gave me motivation throughout most of my competitive career. I think I won my first board race when I was 13, and it was at Manly Beach. It was like a grey day, and I wasn't that good a paddler. I definitely wasn't the best in the race. So much so that my dad was actually watching, which I always make fun of him for. Like, he wasn't watching my first ever board win. He was off watching my 6-year-old brother do the flags, which is where you get up and turn around on the sand and dive for a piece of hose that's been cut in pieces. And I had a good start. I was against paddlers that were definitely better than me, but I had a good road through the waves and was first out the back and managed to come around and hold on for the win. And that just gave me that awareness of and that confidence that I've trained and I've improved to actually even make this final. And then once you're in the final, anything can happen. You can win it, and that's very motivating. And as you go into seniors, when you turn 14, you go from a really short nipper board that you paddle on your stomach to a longer one that's about 10'6" that you paddle on your knees. And we had a different coach for that, which was Scotty. This is all at North Bondi Surf Club, um, which is
This
where
is
I
Scott Thompson.
yeah, Scott Thompson.
And Jimmy Walker was your previous coach. Now, before we get to Scott, there's something I want to pin down, because like this is again so fascinating that you were so scared of the ocean, but then you overcame it. Um, w- like, was it just a cumulative amount of time spent around the ocean that you built over that fear, or was there a moment when you had a mental clarity of like how better to operate in the ocean? Um, and and because you know, again, like you said, Jimmy could have gone the opposite direction, be like, get out there, you got to get in the ocean, and that would have might have had the opposite effect on you, and you might have gone, more anxiety, more fearful of the sea, because like, there's a lot of kids out there who could probably relate to this factor who are young. um what do you think
Yeah, for
did it?
sure. I guess other strategy would end up, yeah, making, if Jimmy had decided to try and be more scary than the ocean. But then I think what would have happened is I would all of a sudden just associated the beach in general and training in general to being scared. So it would have driven me away. I think he knew because I so badly wanted to be out there. It wasn't me not wanting to train, it was me just being so scared that he knew that I would be able to push myself at my own rate. And that was one of the reasons it was so hard for me when I was that age, is because it took me so long to see improvement. But I did just keep pushing myself. Like there was always people supporting me. Lizzie Wellborn, who's came second in the Moloka'i paddle 3 times and also incredible Ironman and has been on the professional series since she was 16. Her family is very close with my family, and her dad used to try and bribe me to go out the back and surf on days that I'd just be outright refusing it. And yeah, again, we're not talking what big waves, we're talking just overhead high. And there was one day when I went out, he'd actually convinced me. It was a really nice day and it was just a little bit out of my comfort zone. He goes, Charlie, I'll give you $20 if you can make it out the back. And I found a lull in the wave, sprinted out the back. And then once I got out there, a big set came through and that just like scared me to so much that I was too scared to come in. So I sat out the back without a wetsuit, like it's like skinny little kid, too scared to come in, and I was freezing cold, and no one on the beach knew that I was upset and scared out there. And eventually one of my mum's friends swam out and realized that I was not able to come in, and she helped me in. And it was just things like that. I'd be like, I got out there and it wasn't a cathartic moment. I was still terrified out there. And it just came from little things like that, like pushing myself over time, that when I was about 15, all of a sudden just dissipated very quickly. And it allowed me to get confidence to know that if I'm racing now in really big swell, I can trust my surf skills. And some of my best results have come from racing and surf that scared the hell out of me. But I've learned that difference between rational fear and irrational fear, and how to use nerves to get me to perform better as opposed to get me to shut down and just run away from challenges.
So such great advice. So let's talk about Scott Thompson. When did he come on your program?
Yeah, so when I was 14, you start training with Scotty on the longer boards. And Scotty and Jimmy have very, very different coaching styles. Jimmy was also the ski coach, which you start paddling when you turn 15 or 16. So I the way he coached when you were in Nippert was very different to when he coached when you were closer to an adult. And Jimmy's coaching style was very much when you rocked up to the session, he was going to get the most out of you, whether you liked it or not. And Scotty was different in the sense that if you wanted to rock up to the session just to have fun with your friends or keep fit, he was fine with that, provided you weren't interrupting a session. But if you he would give exactly as much as the athlete wanted to give to the sport, and a little bit and more. So I was already really motivated at this time. I'd gotten to the point where I was probably the best board paddler in my age group at North Bondi, which was a massive improvement for me. And I was just on this roll of where I could keep seeing myself improving. And he saw how motivated I was and just would put so much time and effort into to support me and keep me motivated. And as I became closer with him, he would always be available. He would like almost every week sometimes we'd sit down and have a meeting about what was working in our training program, what I could improve, what my weaknesses were, and how I could fix those. And he was just really good at I reckon through Scotty I really learned how to communicate with my coach and get the most out of a coach. When you're younger, like you rock up to training and you just do what the coach says. Whereas with Scotty, I learned how to basically take his knowledge and seek his knowledge, and then take what I've learned in all the time I've training and find a program that's gonna be the best for me. And yeah, Scotty has coached me through. I got my wild card into the series under Scotty. I've won. Like one of my proudest achievements was winning the first ever Taplin for North Bondi. And he was my coach then, and Jimmy again on the ski. And yeah, I owe all the results I've ever had to basically them fueling my passion for the sport and and teaching me how to be a good athlete.
That's so epic. If you could sum up what you've gathered from them and then give advice to a coach or coaches who coach young athletes, what's a good solid piece of advice you've drawn from them that you could just um, speak to the world about?
So hard to pick just one because you spend so much time with them and there's so much knowledge that they give you. I think the biggest takeaway I've gotten from Jimmy is to make sure that you're training to race. It doesn't matter how fit you are, but if you're training slowly, you can't expect to race fast. So, Jimmy's training was very skill based and teaching yourself to deal with the pressure of a race. He'd created this thing called the tidal on the ski, and it was just a race. It was not a long race, like 150, 200 meters maximum. And the previous winner was the only person who could put up the title. And all of a sudden that was the race. You had to get in a headspace. It doesn't matter what's happened, how tired you are, what your training's done. You want to try and get that title because it's bragging rights in the shower, and it was all about teaching you to get into that race mentality and perform when you have to perform. And then I think with Scotty, I think I actually developed my ability to be a very skilled racer through Scotty. Like obviously, both of them taught me to work really hard. And yeah, Scotty especially was really good at helping me find my motivation. But we would do a lot of time with Scotty where we'd do a long iron session, and it might not be at 100% because you can't go 100% every session, but instead the focus would be on, okay, we're going to do 6 irons and you got to try and not make a mistake. And even if it was only at about 75%, it's still hard to be, you can never be perfect. But what it did is it just gave you that time and reinforced your skills, because navigating surf is hard. It's not like something you can practice and then apply the same thing every time. The surf's always changing. And I think, yeah, Scotty's training just reinforced the decision-making skills in my head so that when I was fatigued in a race, it became instinctive rather than, oh, am I going to roll my board under this wave or am I going to try and pop it? Because sometimes when you're trying to make a decision, you usually make the wrong one. And I think, yeah, Scotty's training was and Scotty's coaching was really good at building that muscle memory and that perfectionism almost within your training.
Epic advice. So sick. Now, in the lead up to our interview, we had a pre talk, and the biggest takeaway I got from that was your story of when you just hit the wall, you overtrained. And as someone who's dabbled in endurance sports for a lot of my life, like that's always a fine line as far as going too hard or not going hard enough. You the recovery, the importance of recovery. And I think back to like when I was younger, like recovery was way less important just because I thought I had to just grind it out, pound it out. And the story you told me about in your younger years from where you are sitting today, you went to a place where you just grinded yourself to the core. Um, can you speak to that experience of going so hard you hit the wall, and then how you recovered from that, and now your mindset when it comes to recovery and going hard in training, but knowing where you're sitting with that. And so much of this seems to be about understanding the self, understanding the body, and keeping everything just super dialed in. And I would love to hear more about your ideas here.
Yeah, for sure. So throughout all my improvement as I was going up through the age groups, I'd always had with every improvement I got, every new result, it was always reinforcing the idea of that, oh, I trained harder, I went better. And so my attitude was always around, okay, if I want to train if I want to be as best as the best person I can, the best athlete I can, it involves pushing myself harder than every other athlete. And yeah, like continuing along with like my journey of improvement, my first ever state medal was in the under 17s board. And my friend Hamish and I were the only people from North Bondi to qualify for that board final in that age group. And we were at either end of the start line. And we're very different people, like builds. I was still very skinny and small, and my mate was like 6'4" and 100 kilos. And I think there's a video of it somewhere, but there was a bank on the start, and the gun goes off, and we start running in, and everyone's sprinting across this bank, and Hamish and I at the exact same time just fall flat on our face in a pothole, and the whole field keeps running. And I was lucky that I was on the inside and managed to. I was very fired up and angry because I was like, I've made this final. I wanted to go well, and I've just stopped it before the races even started, really. And I managed to paddle back into it around the inside, and I got third. And again, I was just going, wow, like I've I've not only gotten the best result I've ever had, but I gave everyone else a 15-meter head start and was able to do that. I need to keep training harder and I'll keep going better. And as yeah, I've kept improving over the years, and it is true. You can't expect improvement without working hard. But during the COVID lockdowns in New South Wales, I ended up going up to Queensland and training with Burleigh Surf Club under Michael King. And during that time, I'd given myself a goal. It was a different program that I'm used to, so that obviously takes a toll on the body as well. But I'd also given myself a goal. I was sick of being bad at swimming, so I wanted to do 70 swim sessions in 10 weeks on top of the iron program that I was doing. And there was a week lockdown in Queensland, so that ended up becoming 8 sessions a week in the pool on top of a full iron program. So trying to train for running, gym, board, all at the same, and irons all at the same time, and ski. So I had this piece of paper where I'd just drawn out the calendar, and every day I'd drawn out the calendar of swim sessions. I'd cross out a swim session every time I did it. And I started getting a little bit sick during that time. And I just had this goal so strongly in my mind that I was going, I just can't afford to miss these sessions. I want to get these 70 sessions. So I'd go and I'd just push through being sick. And it just kind of built. And I got through those 70 swim sessions. I came to the trials, was probably swimming the best I have been ever. But I got sick again like the week leading up to the trials. The trial format is the most ruthless racing of the entire program. You have 6 races. Sorry, yeah, you have 6 races over a weekend of all different formats of irons, and you qualify from usually about 100 to 200 athletes on the first day down to 20 on the second day, and then from there the top 7 go through to make it to the Nutrient series, which is the professional series. And I made it to the second day, still wasn't feeling my greatest, just ran into the first race and came dead last, and I was gutted because it's pretty hard to recover from that. But I was motivated going to another race and just come like second last in that one, and just going, what's happened? My body feels like it's falling apart. And I was pretty disappointed to not make the series. And I kept training. I came back to Sydney because the lockdowns had all finished. And I went on this swimming camp with my squad at Sydney Uni where they travel away somewhere. We went down the coast, and they do 3 swim sessions on the Monday, 2 on the Tuesday, 1 on the Wednesday, then do that pattern again, 3, 2, 1. And it's just a massive load. And I'd been getting sick more and more frequently. And I just got down to this session. I did half the week, and all of a sudden I would try and do a sprint 100, and I couldn't go more than 25 meters. And my heart rate wasn't high, but it felt like it was beating out of my chest. And I just started going, something's wrong. I need to check in. And I went to a sports doctor and a cardiologist, and basically they told me that the most likely cause was post-viral fatigue. So it was as a result of not letting my body recover from these illnesses. So it was a very much compounding effect to the point where there's long-lasting damage on my body. And my sports doctor told me that I had to take 6 months off just completely in the lead up to Aussie. That there was like 3 months until Aussie. So all the training I'd done for that year, just done. I had to call it. And that was a massive shock. I went, everything I do for fun revolves around physical activity and being in the ocean. And then I went from doing that all the time, every day. That's my main focus. It's always what I'm thinking about. To the doctor telling me, if you feel really good, you're allowed to walk the dog for a kilometer. And I just didn't know what to do with myself. So that was really hard. And I took that time to go traveling over through Europe, which was not something I was ever very interested in because I was so goal focused. But I was going, this is the best time. All my mates are over there. May as well go do it. And that, because it was so difficult, it really woke me up and changed my framework around training. And I started doing a lot more research into recovery and becoming more focused on making sure I'm training well, not just training hard, and really focusing on the whole idea of improvement in the body is that you're pushing yourself harder than you can go, and then you recover so your body can adapt. But if you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and your body can't fix itself, you just dig yourself into a hole. And yeah, almost at that point, I don't think I'd ever been to an Aussies. I was an open competitor, so it's usually about 6 years worth of Aussies, and I'd only been to one Aussies, just because every year at the end of the year something would go wrong, and usually it was resulting in kind of a burnout, or there was multiple different reasons. There was cyclones, there was COVID, there was my school wouldn't even let me go one year. That sucked. Um, but yeah, this changed my attitude in the sense that I would make sure I was training well, and it was still very difficult because I'd have that guilt if I wasn't training hard. So what I did is I got one of these like wearable devices. I think I have a Whoop at the moment, and it tracks my vitals and basically gives me a recovery score. And the way I use it is the best way to know how you feel is through yourself. Like your body's the best instrument of reading itself there is. But sometimes it thinks you're really tired, even though you're not. So if my Whoop would tell me that I'm terribly recovered and I need to rest, and I felt terrible, that would just be an extra step to get me to go, okay, I need to take it back a little bit. And yeah, since then I've still been very into researching how I can make myself perform at my best. Like I like listening to podcasts on how the body works and how people are trying new ways to get the most out of themselves. And I think that's been really important in getting to that next level. Now that I'm in opens and I'm wanting to be at the front of races as opposed to just being stoked to be in those finals. I have to think a lot more like a professional athlete where I'm not just going in every day and just getting the session done and going home. I'm thinking about getting the session done with high quality, and then yeah, the biggest things for me in recovery are when you've done the session, getting yourself into a recovery mindset as quickly as you can, because that just kickstarts your body's functions into making sure you're recovered. And then nutrition is another massive one. I used to not be a big believer in supplements because I thought you could get it all through food if you had a good enough diet. But I can't remember what it was. Someone told me that you're doing more than your body is supposed to be doing. So you have to feed it in a different way. And that kind of woke me up to like, yeah, it's a very good point. I can't expect to perform that at the peak human performance going off of a diet that is is not specifically tailored to allow that. So I maintain my healthy diet that I always had, but I would supplement things like magnesium and zinc and vitamin C on top of that, and like amino acids. And then the biggest one as well is sleep, and that's probably the one I'm worst at because I like being busy. I like having a lot going on, so I have to be really really on top of it to make sure I'm getting enough sleep to be getting up at 4:30 5 a.m. in the morning every morning. And that's the other reason why the Whoop has been so good. It holds you accountable. It tells you exactly how much sleep you have, and it factors that into how recovered you are. And I think I owe a lot of my improvement to that next level since that break I had to take because of my change in attitude towards recovery.
Well, it really makes your recent win at coming in third in the Ironman, it's so huge that just must be so extra special after going through all that. And so many people might have been in that place of you all the training you did went out the window. You had to do nothing for 6 months. Like that could have been it right there. But you bounced back and what mentally were you able to do to yourself? Like that's such an identity crisis as far as every day you're training, but now you can't do it? What aside from, going on your travels and getting distracted with other things, so like how did you overcome that? I can only call it an identity crisis because your identity was wrapped up in training. The feeling you get from a hard train is like a drug, like it's super addictive. Like, and that's what got you into the hole was that feeling. I can only imagine. Um, I want to get into these other particulars real quick, but what was it that allowed you to bounce back from a mental standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. Like identity crisis obviously sounds dramatic, but it was how I felt. It was my identity that all of a sudden I wasn't allowed to enact, like act around. So I had to really work hard to find new ways to have fun. So that meant exploring part of the world that I hadn't been to, like going traveling on my own after, yeah, living a pretty a life very much framed in a bubble around training, and I was at home and very supported by my family. And then yeah, I think I worked harder on keeping up my social life. So after school, because I lived such a busy lifestyle, my mates were always the ones that were convenient and the ones that were around. But I worked on trying to reconnect with people that I really enjoyed, but I just didn't have time to see before. And on top of that, I worked pretty hard on my uni. Like I'm always pretty motivated in what I do, but since at school, I was very hardworking in school, but finishing school, surf became my new priority because I'd achieved what I wanted to in school, and I was happy just getting through uni and seeing how good of an athlete I could be while I can be an athlete. And I don't think I did the best job possible at at managing my my feeling of loss of identity, but I think it was important in making me appreciate why I like living my lifestyle the way I do, is because I do feel a bit empty when I can't access that, and obviously it's a gift to be able to spend every day in the ocean, and yeah, to be able to push your body as hard as you can push it, because sometimes your body can't take it and you need to treat it well and be careful.
So now you're back in it. You're at the highest caliber of your life. What are these new biomarkers that, aside from the feeling of yourself, that you're looking at? When I talk about biomarkers, I'm thinking like if you're putting out a high level of exertion, but maybe your heart rate isn't matching that. Like, would that be a sign that your body's fatigued? Or what are the kind of the things that you can say or look at and be like, hey, maybe I need to turn it down today? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So you can kind of separate it into two categories, which is basically your impression of how you feel. So your body's is very good at telling you when you need recovery and when you're tired, but it's not perfect. And then there's the database that you can't feel. So like your heart rate and your heart rate variability and your respiratory rate, and like all the data that I get from my Whoop is that plus blood oxygen and skin temperature. And the way that the data points usually work is there's a lot of intricate details, but more often than not, if your resting heart rate that it measures while you're sleeping has a dramatic increase, it means that your body is working to recover you. It's not in that relaxed mode. I always forget the difference between like sympathetic and parasympathetic, but one of them is more dominant and is keeping your heart rate elevated. And your heart rate variability, which is when you have your heart rate at 60 beats per minute, it's not beating at exactly 1 beat a second. It changes. It will beat really quickly for a couple seconds, and then it'll get longer. And that's where your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system are fighting each other to basically put yourself either in fight or flight mode or in just relax and yeah, be efficient mode. So when you're really recovered, your nervous system is very good it can go either way really easily. It can go, oh, I want to fight or flight, or I want to relax. So your heart rate variability is higher. Whereas when you're not recovered, it yeah, the heart rate variability will drop because you're more focused on your recovery. And then obviously it's it looks out for data for when you're getting sick and things like that. So if your skin temperature is elevated, it can usually mean you've got a fever coming. If your respiratory rate's increasing, you might not be getting oxygen in as efficiently. And it's I love the science behind it. I think it's cool that you can document how recovered you are on a piece of paper without actually knowing anything about what you've done or or even the person if you just have a baseline of those measurements. But then the the other part that I've become more aware of is the markers in yourself. So the biggest one for me is immune system suppression. So if I'm getting sick more than I should be, I'm suddenly aware of like, oh, I've been long-term training too hard. I need to pull it back. Another one is mood. If I'm feeling like down in my mood, or even just not fluctuating much in my mood, just it's very hard to reflect on how you feel normally when you're feeling a certain way currently. But I think I've gotten better at that because if you're not feeling normal, something's usually wrong. So you have to, yeah, that gets me to check all the other stuff, check what I'm doing, making sure I'm recovered. And yeah, I think those are the main ones that I'm focusing on.
Man, you explain those so well, and the heart rate variability for me too. I will make sure every night I go to bed with this thing on, just so I can wake up and I can look at the Apple app and see that chart. And it blows my mind that this little device can read all that data, and then that data is so accurate. Like if that chart goes up super high, like I do know I feel so good, but it vice versa. If it's kind of like a little one, like it's not that good. And how you hit those notes about mood, that's so spot on. Thank you for doing that. Uh Now, Charlie, you're going into a new season. You just wrapped up this amazing Aussie experience, which was, a lot of little bangers, like little short races, and you're going into this what it can only be really described as more of a marathon versus a track meet. So like, how are you looking at Moloka'i to Oahu? How is your training changing? And what is your mental space going into this massive race? And you've done it how many times now?
I've done it once. I
You've
did
done
it
it
last year
once,
for
so
my
you
first.
have a strong experience of what it's like, what to expect. Um, what's up?
Yeah. Okay. So last year was my first time. So I really didn't know what to expect, and I very much trained for it in the attitude of I'm gonna train so that I know I can finish it. And I knew I had a chance to go well, but I didn't want to train with the attitude of oh, I really need to win it, because if I got over there and it all fell apart, I didn't want to have a really negative experience. I wanted to just give myself the goal of I'm just going to get through it, and it's such an amazing race to even be a part of. Like soak up the it's a very I want to say spiritual. Like they get very it's a very emotional experience being a part of the race. The way you travel over the island and they introduce you to it, and you all hold hands in a circle on the beach before you start, and then you walk off the beach and you can only just see it's I think it's 32 miles. It's 52 kilometers between the islands, and you can just see the silhouette of the top of the volcano just coming out of the clouds on the horizon. And you go, oh my God, I've got to paddle there. Like using just my arms, you've just flown over across, and it's taken like half an hour, 45 minutes in a plane. How am I supposed to paddle there? And yeah, I was lucky enough to actually win the first time, and that gave me confidence that okay, this year I know I can do it, and I can train a lot harder and train with the attitude of like I really want to defend my title. Last year I was more focused on enjoying the training so that I had a positive experience about it. But this year I still want to enjoy the training, but I've increased my load a lot more, and I I know what worked for me and what didn't work for me. I've got Mick the Better writing my programs and coaching me for my Molokai preparation, and he was the inaugural winner of the race. So this year's the 25th. He won the first one and has competed in every single one since then. So he's done 24 of these crossings, which is pretty incredible. So you can't ask for any more experience than him. And he's been great at helping me. Every time I have questions, I give up and give him a call, and we'll be on the phone for an hour just talking about paddling a board with some arms and some choppy water. It's amazing how much time we can fill with it. But yeah, this year Aussies was later, so I didn't have as much time to prepare, which meant I only had 2 weeks off of training where I went on my surf trip with my mates and just try and get myself to mentally reset as possible. And the actual benefit of that is when I started back training, I was fitter than I normally am when I start training. So I've felt really good in my preparation so far. A lot of the training is when you train for short course, you're reinforcing your body to let you output as much power and speed as you can without blowing yourself up for the whole race. And that's the same thing you're doing for Moloka'i, but you're actually having to teach your body almost to restrict how much power you put out, because you don't want to every time you push yourself hard, you're damaging your muscles, and you have to stay out in that channel for anywhere between 4 and 6 hours. So if you put all of your effort trying to catch one runner and blow yourself up, you're going to pay for that in 3 hours, because you won't be able to sustain that. So the training goes from, in short course, you just usually get shorter and shorter and sharper leading into Aussies, just to teach yourself to go fast. And then now my training is in the pool. I'm still pushing myself pretty hard, and we're getting a little bit more distance as we go into winter. That's just normal winter training, as you do more distance. But every weekend I'll go out for a long paddle, and I'm just trying to build that up so that I can get to the point where I can do a 4-hour paddle, then 4-hour plus paddle. And Mick was very, very reinforcing, very strict on the idea. Charlie, I know you really want to win, but you can't go too hard in these long paddles, because it's about teaching your body to just keep going and not let yourself empty the tank in 5 seconds. Because in the channel, they're all amazing athletes, they're all super fit, but the race is won in the last 2 hours. So it doesn't matter how fit you are. If you're racing, you're usually going to blow up at about 3 hours, and then the winner is the person that can just grit their way through for that last 2 hours. Yeah, the channel's such a unique race, because it's an endurance race, but it's still so exposed to the elements. And you have a boat with you with a captain. I had a local Hawaiian named Kyoki, who was this lovely person, very, very quiet but very knowledgeable, who has to pick your line, because you can't tell if you've gone the shortest route, but also you don't always want to go the shortest route because there's currents you can run into. The wind is usually coming slightly across you. So if you end up too far on the wrong side of the island, you have to paddle into the wind at the end, which is going to slow you down. There's so many factors that go on, and it can break you, because you can be going really well, and then all of a sudden you get stuck in a current, and everyone who's 200 meters to the right of you just paddles past you. And yeah, this is all stories I've heard from Mick and Lizzie as well, because yeah, she's had so much success in the race. Her and Harriet Brown. Harriet Brown is Lizzie's like business partner at the moment, but she's also a professional Ironwoman, and she has won 3 Molokais, and Lizzie would always get second to her, and most of the time Lizzie would be in front for most of the race, and Harriet would come through at the end. And in their most recent one, I think after a 5-hour race, the difference in the finish time was less than a minute. And yeah, it's hard to describe how heartbreaking that would be. You put all this training in, you've hurt yourself so much for that whole race, and you lose by that little margin. It keeps you very honest. But the feeling last year of crossing the line was pretty special. Like you've got the people greeting you, everyone's so welcoming, and yeah, you look back at where you've come from and you can't actually see it. So that's a pretty cool experience as well.
And congratulations on that win. That must have been absolutely epic to because how where in the race were you when you realized that you were gonna take it?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was pretty special. I There's actually a cool little story. So Kyoki, as I described, the boat captain was very reserved and quiet most of the time. And when you race that long, you have to you have to transfer water, like get new water bottles, have food. And so someone jumped. It was Rob, the guy who used to bribe me to go out the back and surf, was all of a sudden jumping out of the boat in the middle of the ocean to give me food and water. And I was in front for most of the race, and there was one drop off of food where Rob jumped in the water, said, "You're doing well. You've got about an hour and a half to go." And I had about a 5 minute lead, like maybe 3 minute lead on second at that point, and we were holding very steady. And as I went past, Rob was in the water, and Kyoki all of a sudden goes, "Rob, get out of the water. Rob, get out of the water," just with a lot of panic in his voice. And they thought it was a big shark. It was actually a massive black marlin that was circling and having a look at Rob. And Rob likes to say that that was the point where they knew I was going to win, because that was when I started pulling away. I think I ended up having about a 14-minute lead by the end of it. And yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool story, that they had this cool experience with the fish, and then that was when I started to pull away.
Dude, how many times did Rob jump off the boat to give you nutrition?
I think we tried to aim for about every 45 minutes, so it would have been 6 or 7 maybe. It depends. If I run out of water, I just all of a sudden go, "I need some water." We had a pretty strict plan on what I would do for food. Like I see a dietitian to know how much energy I'm roughly going to be consuming. So you calculate how much energy you need to put in your body to sustain that. Yeah, that again is part of what race makes the race really cool. You're kind of in a little team. My dad was on the boat with Kyoki trying to navigate and trying to track where all the other athletes are, because once I was in front, they wanted to try and keep me in the same water as the other athletes, because that way I knew that we were under the same conditions, and I was pretty confident at that point that I could out paddle them. Whereas if you were behind, like you'd try and just roll the dice and go a different direction to try and find some different water that would be effective.
So, so Kyoki found your line. You weren't finding the line. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I get given a rough direction. They say aim for the clouds, because all the clouds condense around the island. But yeah, that's just to kind of the runners come, the wind blows over your right shoulder, so from right to left, it's not a perfect straight line. So you need to have that guide kind of keeping you north of the rum line, they like to say, so that you don't end up having to paddle back into the wind. And when you're out in that much open ocean, you can't have a gauge of where you are, because you can just see one point. You can't match yourself to a marker. But he has the GPS tracking on the boat, and yeah, and he's very knowledgeable. This year, I've got my godmother's husband. His name's Paul. He was like a Navy SEAL, like a clearance diver, and so he's a very knowledgeable waterman and good with boats. So he's going to be yeah, helping pick my line this year. So I have a lot of confidence there with him.
And is the boat further? Like how far away is the boat from you?
Yeah, it's there for safety. So it's usually pretty close, but it's not allowed to touch you, and it's not allowed to influence you with its wake. So it would usually sit about between 130 meters away from me. But then when it would do a food drop, it would have to drive up about 200 meters ahead of me, and then he'd jump in the water, and then the boat would get out of the way while I paddled past Rob, get the food, get the water, and then the boat would come back in again. And yeah, there's a lot of rules around that, and it's pretty easy, just as long as the boat's out of the way and not impacting you. They're close enough to yell at me if they need to.
Oh, so epic. And then just again, winning must have just been out of this world, because you didn't go into it with a mindset of having to win. It was more of an enjoyable mindset. All of a sudden here you are crossing the line. What was that feeling like? And can you kind of bring us there?
Yeah, it again. I was even worse at basically trying to convey how I felt on that finish line, because I was so delirious and so tired. But there was so much time and effort and support that goes into doing that race. When I first heard about it when I was about 15 or 16, when Lizzie was talking about it, and I've fell in love with the idea of 6 hours of catching runners. That sounds like heaven. And I wanted to try and be the youngest person ever to do it. But every year I was always not able to do it. I'd watched Jamie Mitchell's documentary, like The Decade of Dominance. He's the best ever to do the race. He won 10 in a row. Yeah, I think you had him as a guest, and I'm sure if you listened to that, you'd be able to hear about how incredible he is as an athlete. And he was actually the commentator for the race when I was racing. So that was pretty cool. I had this guy that had idolized me, I'd idolized around this race. They're commentating as I was doing it. And yeah, there was this difficulty around I'd sat a lot of my final exams for school earlier. They had like these accelerated programs, and that would always happen around the time of the race. So I had this board that I bought to do the race because I wanted to be one of the youngest people ever to do it, and it sat in my shed for like 4 years, and I never even used it because I never was training for the race. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'll finish school, I can do it. And then COVID happened, and then I had the fatigue issues. So it was such a long build up to doing this for the first time, and then to be able to win that race with so much history behind it, and it was very, very special.
So sick. And now this year though, you have a mindset of having to defend your title. How does that feel and sit with you
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in contrast to where you were last year?
Yeah, I'm confident, and I think I have to be in order to stay motivated for my training. Like I know that I can do it. I've just got to put in the work. I've like the favorite last year was Stewie McLaughlin. He's one of the greatest board paddlers of all time. He's won 4 Australian titles. He's won the stock category of the Moloka'i 4 times and has the current world record for it. And he had a malfunction in his board last year, so there was always this big, oh, what if he was there, who would have won? And this year's he's said that he's coming back, and that this is going to be his last one. And he is just such a ferocious competitor, such a hard trainer. I listened to his podcast, and it characterizes him perfectly. Just yeah, how he loves to get in your head, and he's also just an incredible athlete. So it's that's also very motivating. I've got this incredible athlete that I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to try and out train and out race to in order to defend my title. So that's also very motivating. But it also is a bit scary. Yeah, I like Stewie. I think it's really cool to be able to race against him. Um, and yeah, if I just want to, my training goal is to come out on the day with whatever result, knowing that I gave everything I could to that race. And if I lose to him, there's not many people that it would be more honorable to lose to. And if I beat him, that'll be great. But I'm sure we'll still be mates on the finish line. Like it's just sport. You're still people first.
Yeah, that's such the beautiful thing about competition and being a good competitor is knowing the battlefield is one thing, and then off the battlefield it's all good. Yeah, Stuart came on the program, and the man just has so much tenacity to him. You can cut it with a knife. Super impressive guy. So yeah, you're definitely gonna you got a good mindset to be ready to fight. Um, for those listening that might not know what we're talking about, this is not stand up paddleboarding with a paddle. A lot of people in the United States think of paddleboarding as supping. This is not that. This is laying down on a large board, almost surf paddling, and then going to your knees and paddling also. Never standing up, either knees or prone, as they say. And in this race, there's two divisions. There's stock and then unlimited. And let me make sure I have this right. Unlimited is the board. There's no limit to the height or the size. You know, it could be like 14 feet maybe, and then or larger, I guess. And stock is below maybe 12 feet. Do,
Yeah, I think it's either 12
can
or
you
14.
break that down for us for those who um need to know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So one of the reasons that the race is so difficult, there's lots of races out there that are so much longer than Molokai, but one of the reasons it's so difficult is because when you're in runners, it's not constant paddling, it's explosive and then it's rest, and then it's explosive and then it's rest. And you're in a position that is very taxing on the body. Like the body's not designed to sit on your knees and support yourself up like that, or even when you lie down, sit with your head up. And you see some of the people that do the flat water versions of these races have little foam pads to rest their chins on because they can't support that position for that long. So yeah, when I finished the race last year, I was on a flight back home the next day and I couldn't sit in the airplane chair just because my back and my bum was so sore from trying to maintain that position. And I preferably paddle on my knees. So if I do short course racing, I'm trying to spend almost the whole race on my knees because I'm faster like that. Stewie McLaughlin is unique in that he is a purely lay down paddler. So when you transition in nippers from the short boards up to the longer boards, most people start paddling on their knees, whereas Stewie stayed on his stomach because that was how he was fastest, I think is how he described it. And the lay down paddles have had a lot of success. It allows you to have a more narrow board because you're not having to worry about being as stable. And when you have a much more consistent level of thrust. So when the runners are really small, or it's really glassy, you can just keep that momentum really well. Whereas on your knees, you get like a really explosive stroke, and then the board gets up on the plane and then sits back down again. Um, so yeah, he's nicknamed the wriggler because his lay down technique is like he's wriggling on the board. And then the difference in the boards is the stock ones. I think they're usually 14 or 12 to 14 feet, and they are just a piece of foam with some fiberglass around it. There's no special help, and some would argue that it's harder to get across because you're on a slower piece of craft when it's smaller. So the race takes longer. Whereas on the unlimited, they're my one's about 17, 18 foot. They're like depends on how big you are. There is no limit to the board you can have. You can paddle over on anything. You could paddle over on a top of an esky or like what you guys call them a cooler. Like if you get there, you're in the unlimited category. But we're trying to be on the fastest board that we can. So yeah, mine's about 17 foot and they have a rudder. So the rudder sticks through the board and then it has a tiller which you control with your feet or your knees. And that's just because when you're on a board that long, you can't just control it with your arms. You need more intricacy in your control, especially when the wind's not perfectly straight. You need to be able to fight into it a little bit. And it's so long that with just your arms, you just get turned with the direction of the wind. And yeah, the difference in the races, I don't like to think of one as harder than the other, but that might be biased because I'm just jealous of the harder version of the race in the stock boards. I just think they're different. The stock boards is just a grind. You're just out there for hours and you got to fight your way through. And the runners that you're catching are very much wind runners. You explode and then you surf it. But whereas on the reason that the longer boards are so much faster is when the wind swells, like big waves come under you, it sits that tail up for longer. So you have more time to catch it. So you can catch these bigger, faster swells. But what that does require is a different technique. On the shorter boards, you can just do really fast rating and get your board up out of the water and catch it. On the longer boards, I found it's a lot more about holding the water, building your power through the stroke, and then exploding at the end of it to get the board to run. And it's just a different technique because it's not as just it's explosive in a different way. It's powerful and you spend more time trying to get the board to go faster, which is hard in a different way. Instead of it being a long grind, you're at a higher work rate, I would say.
And why did you choose to go in the unlimited direction as opposed to the stock?
To me, it's the premier event. Like again, with that was what Lizzie did when I heard about the race for the first time. That was what Jamie did when there was that decade of dominance. And in my head, it's the winner of the unlimited was the person who could paddle from Molokai to O'ahu the fastest. And I think that's pretty cool. I think that's what defines the world champion in the Moloka'i to Oahu.
Epic, epic. So my friend and competitor and athlete Rob Brown, he's going to be doing the stock. Do you know any big names that he's going up against?
Yeah, for sure. There's the difficulty with the unlimited board is it's so big you can't bring it on a plane, so you have to ship it across on a container and it takes hours and it's expensive. I was lucky enough to buy a board that was already in Hawaii, so I didn't have to deal with that organizational nightmare. So the stock board you can chuck under a plane. It's much more accessible. So a lot of the people in Australia are doing it on the stock board this year. There's a guy from North Bondi, my old surf club, that is doing the stock, and he's a really good paddler. He's also a laydown paddler. His name's Duke Wheeland, and we've been training together, and he's going pretty well. We had a downwind the other day. It was one of my first ones of training, and we'd organized to kind of meet together at three different spots. But when you're out in the ocean and it's really big swell and windy, you can't really see more than 30 meters if you're not in sync with the waves. So we couldn't find each other. I'd sat like three times, waited for a few minutes, was going, okay, we'll just meet him back at the final spot. And I got in going, oh, I still would have smoked him. I'm on an 18-foot board. He's on a 12 one. And he was just sitting on the beach waiting for me. So he's paddling really quickly. Then the other big one that comes to mind is a guy named Braden Casamento. He's been in my age group through surf club all the way through, and he's an incredible board paddler. He moved from Victoria up to Queensland to follow his surf sports, and he's been improving a lot. He's one of the top board paddlers in Australia at the moment, and he also went really well in the Coolangatta Gold, which is the endurance Ironman they have over here. And so you know he has that endurance ability. So he's another one to look out for. And those are the only ones I can remember off the top of my head. There are definitely more. There's a lot more stock people coming over from Australia this year. The world
Sick.
champion from last year though is not going to be there, so that does leave it wide open. Hayden Copping, who killed it last year, is not going to be able to make it, unfortunately.
Epic, dude. Yeah, so my job is going to be what your man Rob's job is to jump off the boat. So that's where my mentality's going. So I'm excited to be out there doing that. Your story of the big fish circling, that was a good one. That'll
Yeah,
keep me
no,
up.
it's a cool job.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Like the color of the water out there is so amazing as well. Like when you're just in such open ocean. I remember my first downwind in Hawaii when I went over. I thought I'd seen a new color. It was like this Gatorade blue water in the ocean, which even Gatorade blue wouldn't describe it. It was almost luminous. And I was just going, this is so cool. It makes it worth all that cold winter training that you do in the dark. And you get to come over in summer and just all of a sudden go from wearing 3 layers of wetsuits and booties to just sitting out there in your boardies and catching runners with a whole lot of guys that love the same sport as you.
Uh, thanks for dropping that aesthetic knowledge on us. That's so cool. Well, one more question about that. How much of your journey of that trip is like flat versus waves, and how does I know it's always different probably, but like typically, how from your coach's standpoint, doing it 25 times, how does the I guess the water aesthetic change as far as the wind goes on top of the water?
So that time of year in Hawaii, the trade wind is behind you, it's helping you. So you're kind of expecting that there's going to be runners and a lot of help on the way during your paddle. But that's not guaranteed. There's lots of different versions of the race. There's a ski one, and the last couple of those have been dead flat glassy, and that can happen, which can turn the race from being 4.5 hours to 6 hours. So you do have to prepare for that. I want to be doing as much runners preparation as I can because the most likely chances that it will be in runners. But the other difficult bit is in winter, our trade wind over here is westerly, which is blowing you straight out to sea towards New Zealand. So I'm basically getting every chance I can where the wind is blowing up or down the coast. I'm trying to do a downwind. But last year, most of my training was in the flat. And Mick, my coach, is also very similar with the attitude around that. I think there's such a skill component to it with the runners, that you need to refine that as much as you can. But you do just have to get that grit paddling that you can only do in the flat, and yeah, just work through it because you've got to be prepared for anything that the channel can throw at you.
And you've mentioned that you're doing a lot of pool training and preparation as part of your training. What kind of sets are you doing? How often per week?
So I'm currently doing 4 per week. I swim at Manly Swim Squad with my coach called Justin. He has a lot of incredible swimmers. It's got a lot of the Ironmen from around the northern beaches there, as well as some really good pool swimmers. And we usually swim anywhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours, depending on the set. At the moment, they're preparing for the Olympic trials, so it's still a little bit shorter. We did have like a 7K set the other day, which was long, but most of them have been around an hour and a half, where we do 4.5, 5.5Ks. And then once we get into winter, they'll usually be pretty consistently over six, between 6 and 7. And I'm going to try and work up to doing 5 a week. Whereas last year, I was just doing enough swimming to keep ticking over. I was doing 3 sessions a week with a different squad where I was more focused on just getting the time in, just getting the session done and having that time in my arms. This year, I'm pushing myself at these swim sessions. I'm hurting.
Sick, dude. And you would say that swimming is a great training component to paddleboarding.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've Swimming's been my biggest weakness, and I've spent most of my time working on it. That period I described where I was trying to get 70 swim sessions in 10 weeks, um, I almost completely cut out my board paddling. I would go swimming instead of the individual board sessions. I'd still board paddle in irons, but that's very, very limited board paddling. And then that was at the start of the season, so I hadn't really been on a board for a board session at all. And then they had the Queensland Endurance State Champs, which involves like a 5 kilometer downwind on the clubby boards, which is like the shorter ones that are 10'6". And I felt so uncoordinated. I hadn't been on my board at all. And for the first 3 kilometers of that, I was leading just because of my swim fitness. And the biggest improvements I've had in my board paddling have come from when I've been doing lots and lots and lots of swimming. And I got like 6 in that race. I blew up just because I hadn't spent the time on the board. And also because there's lots of other incredible board paddlers that were there. But I'm a very much a believer that swimming, you have to swim to be a good board paddler.
Charlie, this has been an amazing almost 2 hours now. I could just keep going on and on, picking your
Fine
brain.
by.
Yeah, you did. You're so impressive, man, and I have so much respect for you. Um, I got the kids. They need to go to school, but so we're gonna wrap this up. But before we go, I got two more questions. Um, First, what is your advice to kids out there who want to become high level endurance athletes?
Wow. Um, Make sure you pick a sport that you enjoy doing because you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. And I think it's important to keep your head present when you're training, because when you're doing endurance training, it's almost meditative a lot of the time. That as it gets longer, that first half an hour is usually the hardest. You just keep looking at your watch and the time's not going by and it's hurting. And then you just get into this state where you just stop looking at your watch and you just going, oh look, there's a dolphin. Like I got some really good runners just then. I feel really good. I feel like I'm flowing in my paddling or my even running, like no matter the endurance sport. And you have to stop going, oh, I just can't wait until this session's done, and just start appreciating how good it feels to just have your body be able to do these amazing things. And I think the important part isn't to enjoy it, but if you're wanting to go well, you're gonna have to push yourself as well. It's gonna hurt. So make sure you like doing it.
Oh man, that's such good advice. And that first 30 minutes is so true. Like if you can get over that hump, the rest is just so gold.
Yeah, yeah.
Last last
Yeah, having people to do it with you as well, and that makes the time fly.
yeah, it's good teammates. Last question. What is the meaning of life according to Charlie Verco?
Wow, okay. That's a hard last question. Meaning of life. Oh, the only thing that's popping to my head is like a really, really bad answer, but what the thing that pops into my head is the from the sitcom Parks and Rec. There's a character called Ron who is very butch and reserved, and he really goes against his persona with the quote that if you don't believe in love, what's the point of living? And I feel like that's very applicable to every aspect of your life. Like if you're not loving what you're doing, why are you doing it? And yeah, you can apply that to your hobbies, to like the people you're around. Um, yeah, like uh, I love doing what I do. I love pushing myself to see how well I can perform and get the most out of myself. And that's why I do it. But then I also love just appreciating surfing, and I love the the personal knowledge I've gained about myself and the interpersonal relationships I've gained through surf club. Like I know people, I've got mates all around Australia just from being able to race in all these different places, all around the world now that I've been doing Moloka'i in Hawaii. And I just think that's really cool. So if you're not loving what you're doing, what's the point of doing it?
Well said. So good. Uh, Charlie, before we go, also, do you have any sponsors you'd like to shout out? Anyone else you'd like to give props to?
Oh yeah, sure. Like there's so many people I'd like to thank. I've yeah, I've had amazing support through North Bondi Surf Club as I was growing up. I've had my coaches Jimmy and Scotty, and then had swim coach. I've had so many swim coaches like Mark, Rob. Yeah, there's too many to list there. And then in the past year, I've moved to a new surf club, which was really challenging for me, but I've really enjoyed that. I'm at Newport Surf Club now, and on top of that, I've had some great sponsors. Engine Swim is yeah the best swimmers around and provides me with great gear. Cracker Surfcraft makes my boards, and they're the best out there. I love them. And yeah, Boss Skis. They've they've been nothing but reliable. I wouldn't trust anything else to punch into to big surf on. And then yeah, Bennett paddles as well. Just yeah, I can always trust that they're gonna hold up against the elements that we're forced into.
Yeah, we have Bennett paddles down at our beach for our surf skis. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Charlie, thank you again so much, man. And I can't wait to meet you in person. We're at the filming of this. We got about 8 weeks, I believe, or so till
Yeah.
to Molokai, and it's going to be great to see you guys out there pounding it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for this. It's been great talking to you, and I've loved meeting you and in the previous call, learning about you, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Good luck to your team over in Molokai as well.
Thank you so much, folks. This has been episode 51 of Speaking from Water with Charlie Verco. It has been an absolute epic epic podcast. I cannot thank Charlie enough for coming on and sharing his knowledge of the sport we both love so much, endurance surf lifesaving. And if you've liked this program, please comment below or however you're listening, follow, subscribe, and enjoy the water. Get out there, get wet, get physical, look at the water, feel the water, be with the water. I bid you farewell. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Sean Ruttkay. Peace.
Thank you.
Bro, have a great night. Sorry if I kept you too long. And I know you got to get up early.
No, sorry, I kept you. I love chatting about it.
Oh,
It's
dude, they can go to
great.
school late. I mean, I might just take them to the beach. I don't know. They only have a couple more. There's like school's almost over for the summer, so this was way more important.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Yeah, dog.
And yeah, again, looking forward to meeting you. It's been really cool.
Yeah,
Look forward to
and
meeting you as well.
yeah, dude. And good luck with your training. It looks like you're freaking dialed in.
Yeah, very, very fired up.
Epic, epic. All
Have a good
right,
morning.
and have a good night. Peace.
You sure?